and I would use my imagination, and I would make up stories, make up characters, and continue the whole thing. It's something I enjoyed, and it was something later on that became terrific for me, because I always had to be somebody on stage. Who was I on stage? Who were the other people on the stage? How did they relate to me? So this idea of making story with your body when you were moving became something I understood instinctively, and I could make a character, and I could, by doing a little research, just looking at period costumes, looking at how I could make a relationship with the different aspects. Was it militaristic? Was it peasant-like? Was it noble-like? So I began to realize that it was a mind-driven art form. You did not have a voice, but your body was your voice. You could speak with your body. I watched Balanchine. I could see what he meant. I could see the musicality. I could see how he was playing with rhythms. I could see when he was a noble. I could see when he was a character. So he was a great image for all of this stuff. But in this ballet, he was not interesting. He just simply was not interesting. So I think he kind of left it to me, and he trusted me. But I didn't understand the specific Russian style, and there was a very specific Russian style in his mind. And I simply did not quite have that. Later on, as time was going by, I started to achieve all of that. And I left any kind of sense of histrionics out of it. I just simplified, shaved it down, and it became palatable not only to me, but to the audience. And I thought to Balanchine. But as time was going by, he didn't care. He just didn't care. And I said, okay, here I go. And I'm going to do it. And I did it. And it became my most famous role. And even the critics liked it. I know a critic went up to Balanchine and said, "You're giving this major role to this young kid." And my man said this before. And he said, "Well, you know, the reason why I gave it to him because he looks like a nice little Jewish boy." And he told me that. And I went, okay, now I got it. So don't worry about it. And I won't. I'll just leave it that way. And I will understand. And as a kid at that time, I didn't even know what a yarmulke was. and that was a very, very important part of this role, because he, uh, he defies the yarmulke. And the first time he's going to go away from home, he takes the yarmulke, he throws it down, and then flies off. And then his father comes and makes him come sit down. So it was such an incredible role. And it was fascinating to me to realize that what I had done with it now needed editing. And I had to narrow it down, narrow it down, narrow it down. And it became more real. It became more successful. And it became, as I was suggesting, my most famous role. The Prodigal Son allowed me to understand joy, sorrow, passion, humility. It was a beautiful example of a character, a young man who is evolving, growing up, being seduced, and being ruined, and his journey home to his father's arms, which is just an amazing parable. And that became the solidity for me for the rest of my dancing life. Because when you're on stage, you have to make dramatic comment. And unless you do, you are providing nothing but technique. And I'm sorry to say that most dancing that I go to see is without the artfulness, and it becomes technique. And technique is a very, very boring thing. There are a lot of people who just love technique because they don't see anything beyond the smile on a dancer's face. And for me, the dimension of it all is not just the smile or not smiling. It's this idea to make comment is scary because you are naked. There's nothing left. And that's the scary part of being simple, the simplicity. Because when you deal with simplicity, there's nothing to hide behind. You are there. I have difficulty going to see Prodigal because I have. And I'm not sure they have anybody there who can successfully pass that on. The inner understanding, the central part of that character. Very few people have done it, and done it successfully. And there are a lot of people, there are a couple of people I saw do it, and it was vacant. And it's terribly disappointing. And the rest of it, it's the energy of it. It's the way you see it, the way it all evolves, develops, appreciates. Uh, I would have a very, very difficult time passing this on. The intimacies, right to the bone. Uh, that's a very hard thing to do, unless you have a very sophisticated, prior to his talking to you about a role, and rarely did he ever speak intensely about a role. And Prodigal Son was a style work he particularly enjoyed. It was a work that was imposed upon him by Diaghilev. Diaghilev, of course, was the great impresario who was running the Ballets Russes. And in addition to that, the composer, Prokofiev, thought he was everything, and a choreographer was nobody. And Prokofiev treated Balanchine that way. And Balanchine, when he was first starting work on the ballet, said, "Look, I'm not pleased about this ballet. It's not my favorite ballet, but you should have it." And he said, "I'm going to give you this ballet. And it's like a coat between two men. I lend you my coat. So here is my coat, and I will stage it for you. And after that, you will stage Prodigal Son. I want nothing more to do with it." So I thought, wow, what do I do now? And as he proceeded, it was as though he couldn't get through it fast enough. And he showed me just enough. And I could see that his interest was minimal, that I would get minimal attention from him. I would get little guidance from him. But Balanchine was a man of few words, and in those few words, he would provide you with enough, and you could develop. You could develop your own ideas and so on. So I began working on it, and then he stopped me, and he said, "You're doing this like a movie actor." I went, "Oh boy!" And I suddenly realized that there was a stylistic circumstance to this, and he wanted the Balanchine style. He didn't want too much of my interpretation thereof. So I began to minimize everything, and I got it down to a singular fashion, and I tried not to embellish. Simplicity was the ideal. Less was more. So there I was, and after he finished, he showed me the opening. He he showed me a few other things, and then he disappeared. I didn't see him again. And what he did was he brought in an old ballet mistress, a woman who had taken care of this ballet for years, a woman named Vida Brown. And she was very, very efficient, very terrific. And my problem was she had to instruct everybody else in the ballet. So she spent all of her time with them. And it left me almost on my own. And I thought, okay, I think I have the concept. It began to be a ballet of his invention, but I had to provide further invention. And it became very complicated because I had never had a role like that before. Nobody has ever had a role like that before. And there's so much in it. But his interest was not in it. So it became a curiosity. However, as time was going by, I began to have a definitive point of departure. And people prior to that, for instance, Jerome Robbins was a prodigal son. Some of the other major characters in the New York City Ballet had done it before. So they had left impression and so on and so on. And suddenly my impression became definitive. And that left me with an oddity, without the guidance of Balanchine. It was a really strange place.